Do you remember the angelic voice that drove all of America wild in the 1970s and 1980s? That was Linda Ronstadt, the woman with 11 Grammy Awards and millions of devoted hearts. But few people know that behind the stage lights and timeless hits, Linda's private life was filled with shocking mysteries. High-profile romances with billionaires, even a presidential candidate. Bold decisions that cost her parts of her career, and a devastating medical shock that changed her life forever. The never-before-seen photos you're about to watch will leave you stunned. Want to know the truth behind the fame? Watch until the end. You'll never see Linda Ronstadt the same way again. And meanwhile, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new untold stories about Hollywood stars. Smash that like button and hit the notification bell. Linda Ronstadt was born on July 15, 1946, in Tucson, Arizona, into a family with deep musical roots. Her father, Gilbert, ran a machinery business, but he was also a gifted musician. He sang traditional Mexican folk songs with a voice often described as a blend of Pedro Infante and Frank Sinatra. Late at night, when the family gathered together, Gilbert would play guitar and sing. Everyone listened. Little Linda absorbed every melody, every lyric, every note. By the age of 14, Linda was confident enough to form a folk group with her siblings, performing at small cafes around Tucson. When she told her father that she wanted to go to Los Angeles to become a professional musician, Gilbert's reaction was not pride, but fear. He understood the dark side of the music industry. Young dreams crushed, talent drained and discarded. He urged his daughter to think again, pleading with her not to step into such a ruthless world. But Linda had made up her mind. She didn't rebel. She didn't argue. She simply held firmly to her choice. In 1965, at just 18 years old, Linda dropped out of college. Gilbert realized he could no longer keep his daughter at home. Instead of continuing to stop her, he chose to prepare her. He gave Linda his most precious possession, a Martin guitar. As he handed it to her, he said something that was both a blessing and a warning. "As long as you own this guitar, you will never starve." It wasn't a promise of wealth, but a belief that music, if pursued with honesty and perseverance, could sustain a life. Linda set off for Los Angeles with the guitar, her voice, and just $30 in her pocket. No contract, no connections, no backup plan. Los Angeles greeted her with harsh reality. Millions of people, thousands of musicians, all chasing the same fragile dream. Her friend Bobby Kimmel let her stay with him, but the small house had only one bedroom already occupied. Linda had no bed. She spread herself out on the floor and slept beneath the dining table. Years later, Linda explained that she chose to sleep under the table because if she lay beneath something, no one would step on her. A small detail, but one that says everything. The alertness, the survival instinct, and the fragility of an 18-year-old girl in a distant, unfamiliar city. Hardship forced Linda to make choices that were anything but romantic. She began sharing a bed with Malcolm, Bobby's roommate, not out of love, but out of necessity. In those circumstances, music became her only escape. Bobby and guitarist Kenny Edwards were looking for a singer. When Linda opened her mouth and sang, everything changed. From that chance moment, the Stone Ponies were born. They worked relentlessly. In just 15 months, 3 albums were released back-to-back. Yet success continued to elude them. In the vast sea of folk rock, the Stone Ponies were nearly invisible until the song "Different Drum" exploded. Radio stations played it non-stop. Suddenly, the band's name was everywhere, but Linda understood that this success was also a trap. It could confine her to a role that was never truly hers. What she did next would open the door to one of the most successful careers in music history. While still part of the band, Linda began recording solo albums. Her debut, hand-sewn, homegrown, made history as the first alternative country album recorded by a female artist. Her second album, Silk Purse, disappointed her. Yet, one song from it earned her her first Grammy nomination. That nomination should have been a moment of joy, but instead, it deepened a crisis that had been simmering for years. She was being recognized for music she didn't truly love, songs that lacked poetry, far removed from the music her father used to play. And this growing artistic frustration was pushing her toward a bold decision. The songs the industry sent her felt empty. They lacked the depth she longed for. Later, Linda admitted that she simply wasn't receiving great songs anymore. Not like the ones she had grown up learning. She believed those older songs were better structured, richer in poetry. Her father still came to see her perform. When Linda asked him what he thought, Gilbert didn't avoid the truth or try to comfort her. He said he wasn't mocking or denying her talent. The music just wasn't for him. He didn't belong to that world. And so, a paradox took shape. Linda was rising toward the peak of fame, yet singing songs the most influential man in her life didn't value. Even more troubling, she herself was beginning to hate them. That quiet conflict grew larger each day, slowly eating away at her artistic spirit. But she kept moving forward because the path was already open and there was no room for hesitation. At the time, Linda's manager, John Boland, received a demo tape from a young drummer named Don Henley. The songs weren't right for Linda, but when she heard Henley play live at the Troodor, she immediately recognized his talent, not perfection, potential. Linda decided to hire Henley for her touring band. Around the same time, Glenn Frey, a familiar face in the Los Angeles music scene, was invited to join the tour as a guitarist. Money was tight. They couldn't afford separate rooms. Don Henley and Glenn Frey ended up sharing the same hotel room night after night, city after city. It was in those cramped, stifling, temporary spaces that something magical happened. The two young men began writing songs together, sharpening ideas, experimenting with melodies. No stage lights, no pressure of fame, just two young musicians, a guitar and ambition. Then one day they came to Linda and told her they were leaving to start a band of their own. Linda didn't try to stop them. She understood that feeling, the need to find your own voice. She supported them. Don Henley and Glenn Frey left and went on to form the Eagles, one of the greatest rock bands in history. Few people realize that the origins of the Eagles trace back to those small hotel rooms on tour with Linda Ronstadt. But Linda was also approaching a breakthrough of her own, and it would exceed every expectation. In 1974, the album Heart Like a Wheel was released. It was the result of an intense struggle for creative control, better songs, more refined production, and music that truly reflected who she was. The response from both the public and critics was almost immediate and explosive. The album shot straight to #1. Two singles, You're No Good and When Will I Be Loved, dominated the Billboard Hot 100 and became the defining sound of an entire era. That Grammy season, Linda was honored as Best Female Country Vocalist. She had officially entered the ranks of superstardom. Yet behind the spotlight, Linda carried a quiet, constant fear, one that never left her on stage. Her new manager, Peter Asher, watched her perform night after night and gradually sensed that something was wrong. Linda would look out at the audience and imagine the worst possible scenarios. She believed they were whispering about how bad she was, that she was the worst singer they had ever heard. Later, Linda admitted that she had never felt she sang well enough. She hated making eye contact with the audience. The irony was cruel. One of the greatest voices in music history was bound by relentless self-doubt, Millions of records sold, charts conquered, prestigious awards piling up. Yet inside her mind, one question kept echoing: am I really good enough? The way she confronted that fear was surprisingly simple. Linda told herself, breathe, then sing. No elaborate psychological tricks, no secret techniques, just breathe and sing. Show after show, she forced herself to step through the fear. She even admitted something more shocking. When she first started, she wasn't good. For a long time, she still wasn't good. But she didn't quit. She practiced, she learned, and she slowly became better. A superstar openly admitting she wasn't a natural-born genius. She had to work to struggle to improve through sheer willpower. But her greatest victory was still ahead. In 1977, Simple Dreams was released. The album became one of the best-selling records of the decade. Her cover of Blue Bayou showcased the full range and emotional depth of her voice. It's So Easy won over the heart of America. Blue Bayou went on to become the song forever associated with Linda's name. Then the unthinkable happened. Simple Dreams knocked Rumors by Fleetwood Mac out of the #1 spot. This was extraordinary. Rumors was already considered one of the greatest albums in history, seemingly untouchable until Linda Ronstadt pushed it aside. By 1978, her album sales alone had surpassed $17 million. She had 6 platinum albums. Time magazine called her one of the biggest individual rock stars in the world. In an industry dominated by men, Linda stood alone at the top. She sold more records than anyone else. But success came with a cost she had never anticipated, and it was about to consume her. Stadiums were packed every night. 15,000 people, 20,000 people, all screaming her name. Then she walked off the stage. The crowd vanished. Empty hotel rooms in cities she didn't know. Ordering room service alone, watching television alone, sleeping alone. The loneliness was overwhelming, a ghost that followed her everywhere. Years later, she admitted that humanity still hasn't invented a word powerful enough to describe the loneliness endured by people on tour. Her father's fears were becoming reality. Every night she stood in front of thousands, yet she was completely alone. And the way she coped surprised everyone. She lived in Malibu behind closed gates. When she wasn't touring, she stayed home. No parties, no premieres, no immersion in the Hollywood scene. So what did the biggest female rock star in the world do with her time? She sat and knitted sweaters for her future children. Later, she explained that it was difficult to find real wool sweaters for kids. She wanted her children to have something warm. The woman who commanded stadiums sat at home with knitting needles and yarn, creating simple things that had nothing to do with crowds or cameras. She said fame had robbed her of the ability to observe other people because they were always watching her. She didn't like being disturbed while eating, so she withdrew completely from social life, reading books, knitting, living a deeply private existence. The Queen of Rocks spent her evenings searching for peace through needle and thread. It was the only way she could survive. But loneliness seeped into everything, especially love. Her first serious relationship was with a man who understood the music industry intimately, John Bolan. He was talented, visionary, and soon became her manager. At first, everything seemed perfect. They loved each other, trusted each other, and decided to live together. But that closeness exposed the cracks. Work calls rang at the wrong moments. Meetings interrupted dinners. The line between love and work blurred until it disappeared completely. She no longer knew whether she was talking to her lover or her manager, arguing with a partner, or negotiating with a business associate. The magic dissolved into everyday life. They broke up. Painful, but they continued working together because for Linda, music mattered more than any personal heartbreak. After that came J.D. Souther, a songwriter who deeply understood the world she was living in. He knew what it felt like to stand on stage, knew the pressure of endless tours. They were together for 2 years, writing music together, sharing rare moments that didn't belong to the public. The song Faithless Love was born directly out of that relationship, but the industry leaves little room for tenderness. Tour schedules stretched on, distance grew wider, pressure piled up. Living in the same world didn't make things easier. It amplified every wound. They both understood that music had to come first, and that very understanding is what ended the love. In 1972, they separated, still respectful, still friends. But the door to romance closed with no way back. Gradually, Linda came to a bitter realization. Love in the music world is not like ordinary love. Endless touring roads erode every bond. Fame distorts every emotion. Then she met Jerry Brown, and suddenly her world tilted. They met at a small restaurant in Hollywood. Jerry was disciplined, clear-headed, living by structure and strict self-control. After the chaos of music, he brought her something entirely different: stability. They began dating. Jerry rose quickly and became governor of California. Suddenly, Linda was no longer just a rock star. She was the woman standing beside one of the most powerful politicians in the United States. The media followed their every move. Cameras were everywhere. But some people noticed what the public did not. When he was with her, Jerry became different, witty, softer, revealing a deeply human side that politics usually concealed. Their love was real, but their worlds were fundamentally opposed. Her life was chaotic, constantly in motion with no fixed schedule. Jerry's life was planned months, even years in advance, bound tightly to strategy and public image. The two extremes attracted each other, yet also slowly wore each other down. Jerry needed a partner for political events. Linda needed someone who understood why music always came before everything else. Neither could become what the other truly needed. In 1979, they parted with mutual respect and quiet sadness. Later, Linda said the relationship had still been worth it. Some things are worth experiencing even if they don't last. She went on to date others: Albert Brooks, Bill Murray, Aaron Neville. Each relationship in time also came to an end. Later, she told the Washington Post that she had absolutely no talent for marriage, none at all. Linda never married. Instead, in the early 1990s, she made a different choice. Quiet, but life-changing. She adopted 2 children, Mary Clementine and Carlos. From that moment on, Linda's world grew smaller, yet more complete than it had ever been. Music was still there, but the children became the center, the reason she woke up every morning. Yet beneath the calm surface, an old struggle began to resurface. It didn't come from the stage or the spotlight or the pressure of fame, but from a much deeper place. Memories of her father and the melodies of her childhood. Linda began to long to record Mexican music, the music her father used to play at home, songs with simple rhythms grounded in the earth, rich with memory and identity. For her, this wasn't just music, it was a return. For the industry, however, it was unthinkable. They shook their heads. No one wants to hear that. No one will buy it. Too risky, too foreign to mainstream taste. They reminded her of the title they themselves had created, the Queen of Rock. Why give up that throne? Why gamble an entire career on songs most American audiences wouldn't even understand? But Linda was no longer seduced by titles. In truth, perhaps she never really believed in them. What mattered to her was authenticity. Songs her father could not, along to lyrics with soul, depth, and poetry. And so she moved forward despite waves of doubt and criticism. Some called her reckless, Others said she was destroying her own legacy. Industry insiders were even colder. They told her outright that she was turning her back on millions of dollars. But Linda kept going. In 1987, she made the boldest leap of her life. She appeared on national television with a mariachi band. Millions watched. There was no turning back, no safety net, just her, the musicians, and the music she believed in. And then the unthinkable happened. The performance didn't just succeed, it exploded. It touched an emotional depth that rock music sometimes couldn't reach. Raw, unguarded sincerity. The album was released amid grim predictions. People said it would be commercial suicide. Reality proved the opposite. More than 2 million copies sold platinum. Linda had proven that there was still an audience hungry for tradition, hungry for songs with a true soul. She wasn't just right. She opened a door the industry had deliberately ignored. Just as she was shattering every expectation, another unexpected choice appeared. In the early 1980s, Linda agreed to star in a Broadway musical. The decision stunned many people. Rock to musical theater, these were completely different worlds. But for Linda, it wasn't entirely unfamiliar. Her grandfather had been connected to that very work decades earlier. It was in some way in her blood. Still, the reality was far from easy. Linda knew almost nothing about Broadway. She wasn't used to its discipline, its rules, its rhythms. The first rehearsals were a shock. Around her were seasoned performers, people who had lived and breathed musical theater entire lives, and there she was, unsteady, confused, more frightened than she had ever been in front of tens of thousands of rock fans. Later, Linda admitted that from day one, everyone knew she had been thrown into deep water without a life jacket. But once again, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She took a deep breath and sang. The production became a major success, running for nearly 2 years. A prestigious nomination followed, a belated but well-earned recognition. From the outside, it seemed as though everything Linda touched turned to gold. But on the inside, the cost was becoming increasingly clear. Loneliness continued to build. And then something cruel began to creep in. In the early 2000s, Linda noticed that her body was changing. Her voice no longer obeyed her. She tried to ignore it, tried to adapt, convinced herself it was just exhaustion. But by 2009, the truth could no longer be denied. The diagnosis came, a slow-moving but unforgiving illness. At first, she was still able to manage. She adjusted, compensated, learned to live within new limits. But the disease did not stop. Her voice, the very thing that had defined her entire life, slowly slipped out of her grasp. Linda could hear the change clearly. Every subtle vibration, every note that drifted off pitch. The audience hadn't noticed yet, but she had. And she refused to stand on stage simply shouting instead of singing. She didn't want to take the audience's money for something that was no longer music to her. In 2013, Linda Ronstadt made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the music world. She was stepping away from music. Her performing careers came to an end. At 66, her voice fell silent. The symptoms grew more severe. Parkinson's disease did not arrive loudly. It came in small signs, then little by little stripped away abilities most people take for granted. Hearing became difficult. Walking required concentration. Balance was no longer instinctive. Even the movement of her eyes began to betray her. The disease did not rush. It was patient, taking everything away in its own order. Yet, in the midst of that loss, a quiet discovery emerged. Not loud, not dramatic, almost fragile. The music was still there, not in her throat, not on a stage, but in her mind. In that place, the melodies remained intact. No trembling, no missed beats, no limits. Linda said she could still hear the music, still created in her head. It just couldn't find its way out in the way she wished most of the time. A composer trapped inside her own body while the inner treasury remained untouched. Then Linda spoke a truth that forces people to stop and rethink her entire career from the beginning. A truth that runs against every public image ever attached to her. She never liked performing, not grew tired of it, not eventually burned out, but never. The packed stadiums, the applause, the screams of her name, none of it was ever a joy. What she loved were living room sing-alongs with a few friends, a few loved ones. Recording was fine. The studio felt safe, but the stage, the lights, the crowds, that was always a place she had to force herself to enter. It's hard to imagine a woman who filled arenas for 5 decades, hated every second on stage. From small cafes in Tucson to her final concert in 2009, that feeling never changed. She performed not out of a desire to be seen, but for the music, for the art, for the songs, and deeper still, for the hope of finding melodies. Her father, the strict, practical man who shaped her, could respect. Pause and think about that. 50 years of performing, 50 years of fear, 50 years of stepping on stage with the persistent belief that she wasn't good enough. Parkinson's disease, in the most ironic way, gave her something she had never allowed herself: permission to stop. No more stages, no more having to overcome that familiar terror before every show. A release, almost a gift. And then the story circles back to the Martin guitar in 1965. The gift her father placed in the hands of an 18-year-old girl with a blunt but honest promise. You'll never starve. He was right. That guitar fed her in every sense of the word, not just financially, though. The figure of $130 million cannot be denied, but through a 5-decade career and an immense legacy, 11 Grammy Awards, an Emmy, 3 American Music Awards, induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Kennedy Center Honors, she became a legend. She proved that women could dominate rock and roll in an era when they were expected to stand in the background. She helped launch the Eagles. She brought Mexican folk music into the mainstream. She conquered Broadway without formal training. But her father's warning also came true. The price was loneliness, identical hotel rooms in cities that blurred into one another, relationships broken by touring distance and the brutal demands of fame, being recognized everywhere, yet never truly understood, stage fright that never disappeared, and years spent hidden behind gates in Malibu, knitting sweaters, reading books, searching for peace far from the crowds who loved her but never truly knew her. Now, at 79, she lives in San Francisco with her son, Carlos. It is no longer the Tucson of her childhood, nor the Los Angeles of ambition and pressure. It is an in-between place, a space where Linda can simply be a mother, a woman who has nearly completed her journey rather than a music icon. Mary Clementine and Carlos, the 2 children she adopted, are the family she built with her own hands in a life that never included marriage, but was never lacking in love. She never found a life partner who could walk beside the chaos of a career that was too large, too relentless. Yet that absence became part of her legacy. Performing has ended. Recording is over. The stadiums once filled with her name are now memories. The world has new queens of rock, but Linda's music has never disappeared. It lives in her mind, in the hearts of those who once heard her sing, in millions of records kept like heirlooms, and in the deep influence she left on generations of artists who followed. Linda traded a familiar kind of happiness for something extraordinary. She did not choose marriage. She did not choose stability. She chose music, the spotlight, and accepted a life alongside loneliness, stage fright, and a self-doubt so persistent it was almost paralyzing. When asked whether it was worth it, she never offered long philosophy. She simply said she had lived fully. The Martin guitar her father gave her all those years ago kept its simple promise. She never starved. That guitar gave her a career that lasted decades. It gave her the freedom to sing Mexican folk music when the industry called it reckless. It gave her the courage to step onto a Broadway stage when she barely knew what she was walking into. But her father, Gilbert, saw something else as well. He understood that success in music always demands a price, one that cannot be measured in money or awards. The road is profoundly lonely. Relationships are fragile. Insecurity never fully disappears, even at the very top. Performing is always frightening, even for the best in the world. Still, he gave her the guitar. Because sometimes the people who love us most are the ones who hand us the tools to chase our dreams, even when they know those dreams will hurt us, even when they wish we would choose a safer path, even when they can clearly see the loneliness waiting at the end of the road. In 1965, Linda carried that guitar to Los Angeles. She was 18 years old, $30 in her pocket, a hesitant blessing from her father, a dream larger than the city she came from. She slept under a dining table in a cramped house, steadying herself before every performance with a simple mantra: breathe and sing. She watched musicians she hired leave to form another legendary band. She conquered rock, then country, then Broadway, then Mexican folk music. While believing she was never quite good enough, she knitted sweaters alone in Malibu while millions around the world shouted her name. She loved, but could not hold on to love. She chose motherhood on her own terms. And when Parkinson's disease took her voice, the instrument that defined her entire life, Linda finally received something profoundly human: permission to stop, to no longer step onto the stage, to make music only in her mind. The girl who once slept beneath a table became a legend in the most paradoxical way imaginable by facing her greatest fear and through it changing music forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, stay with me, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos about Hollywood stars. See you in the next one.